The wind screamed through the mountain pass like it had something to say, something ancient, angry, and cold. Snow flurried over the rusted shell of what used to be Peak Station, a forgotten relic from the early 1900s. Most people drove past it without a second thought. To the locals of Ridgevale, it was nothing but a decaying tower of steel and timber, a remnant of failed dreams. But to Amelia Brooks, it was the beginning of something she couldn't yet name. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She stood at the base of the structure that morning, her boots crunching in the frost as the auctioneer's voice echoed through the thin air. "Final call, $1, he drawled, half amused. "Anyone else?" Silence. Only the wind and the creak of a rusted sign that read Peak Observation and Signal Station, established 1904. "Sold," he said, dropping the gavel. "To Miss Brooks, for $1." A ripple of laughter moved through the small crowd of locals. They weren't cruel exactly, just skeptical. Ridgevale was a town that measured worth in practicality, and Amelia, a 27-year-old newcomer with an old Jeep and a notebook full of sketches, didn't fit into their mountain logic. "Guess she's buying ghosts," one man muttered. Amelia ignored them, her fingers tightening around the deed as if it were a lifeline. She had her reasons. 3 months earlier, Amelia had been living in Denver, stuck in a job she didn't love and haunted by a father she barely knew. He died that spring, an engineer who spent his life building radio towers across the Rockies. Among his belongings, she found a leather-bound journal filled with strange entries, coordinates, sketches of ridgelines, and a final note that read, "The signal station wasn't abandoned, it was silenced." The words burned into her memory. She'd followed the coordinates to Ridgevale, and there, high above the town, she found the forgotten Peak Station. When she learned the county was auctioning it off for unpaid taxes, she didn't hesitate. $1. That was all it took to claim the mystery her father left behind. By sundown, Amelia had climbed the steep dirt road leading to the tower. Her Jeep rattled over loose stones, headlights carving paths through the falling snow. The structure loomed against the purple sky, a spire of weathered iron and cracked glass. Inside, it smelled of rust and pine. Dust coated everything, the old control desk, the cracked windows, the faded map of mountain ranges that still clung to the wall. She set up her sleeping bag beside the broken observation window, lit a lantern, and listened. The mountain was eerily quiet. Then, click, her lantern flickered. Amelia frowned. The power lines had been cut decades ago. There shouldn't have been any current. But the small radio transmitter sitting on the control desk, an antique military model, crackled faintly to life. Peak Station. The voice was distorted, fragmented. Amelia's pulse quickened. "Hello?" she said softly. Static. Then silence. She waited for the wind to start again. But it didn't. The whole mountain seemed to hold its breath, and that was when she noticed something strange, the faint outline of boot prints in the dust, leading toward the old service hatch beneath the floorboards. Someone had been there recently. Amelia didn't sleep much that night. Every creak of timber made her flinch. When dawn broke, she brewed instant coffee and crouched beside the hatch. It was locked, but old metal locks rarely held long against persistence and a crowbar. The hatch gave way with a groan, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. She hesitated. The cold air rising from below smelled of wet earth and something metallic. She clicked on her flashlight and began to descend. Halfway down, she found a small underground room, some kind of storage area. Old supply crates, broken lanterns, and a forgotten workbench sat under layers of dust. But at the center of the room stood something that didn't belong, a steel case bolted to the floor. Its surface was engraved with an insignia, U.S. Signal Corps, 1943. Amelia's heart pounded. She wiped off the grime and found another marking scratched by hand, for S.B., her father's initials. Samuel Brooks. That night, as the storm gathered over the peak, Amelia sat beside the radio again. She turned the dials, listening to the static hiss. Her father's journal lay open beside her, pages filled with hand-drawn frequency bands and cryptic messages. At 3:07 a.m., the radio came alive again. "You shouldn't have opened it." The voice was faint but unmistakable. Amelia's hand froze on the dial. "Who is this?" "Static." Then another whisper, "Get off the mountain." Her lantern went out again. The wind howled, rattling the windows like a warning. Morning sunlight spilled through the shattered window panes of Peak Station, glinting off old brass dials and cracked gauges. Amelia's breath fogged in the frigid air as she stared at the metal case she'd found underground the night before. Her gloved hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from what she'd seen carved into the steel. Her father's initials. That wasn't coincidence. She crouched by the case again, flashlight in hand. Beneath the engraved initials, she noticed faint etchings she hadn't seen before. Numbers and letters, worn down by time. RX Frec 081, Project Echo Peak. Her father's journal flashed in her memory. That same code, 0881, was scribbled on the final page, right before his last words. It wasn't shut down. It was buried. Amelia brushed the dust from her jeans and flipped open the crate. Inside were folders, all yellowed and fragile. Some bore the stamp of the U.S. Signal Corps. Others had been marked restricted. Blueprints showed diagrams of a massive transmitter array hidden beneath the peak itself, running on a power source far more advanced than what the 1940s should have had. Her father had written annotations in the margins. "Resonance waves exceed safe limit. Possible interband signal detected." She read until her eyes blurred, until the letters danced like snowflakes. Then she found a faded photograph. Her father, Samuel Brooks, standing in front of the very same dish she'd uncovered yesterday. But something else stood beside him. A tall figure in a lab coat, face obscured by glare, and behind them a faint streak of light in the air, like lightning frozen in time. Her stomach tightened. The back of the photo read, "Echo captured March 1944. Later that afternoon, Amelia drove into Ridgevale to buy fuel and food. The town was small, just a diner, a hardware store, and a gas station that doubled as gossip central. As she entered, conversation slowed. She could feel eyes on her back. "That the gal who bought the Peak Station?" An older man said to his friend, loud enough for her to hear. "Paid $1 for a pile of rust? She's still up there?" Another man chuckled. "Heard the place is haunted. Old radios turning on at night. Ghosts calling out names." Amelia ignored them, pretending to study a rack of thermoses. But when she reached the counter, the clerk, a grey-haired woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "You're Samuel Brooks's daughter, ain't you?" Amelia blinked. "You knew my father?" The woman's face softened. "Everyone did. He came through here years ago. Said he was restoring the station for research. Then one winter he disappeared. Never came back." Amelia's chest tightened. "Did he say what kind of research?" "Something about signals," the woman whispered. "Said he was picking up transmissions that weren't supposed to exist. People told him to stop poking around, that the mountain was better left sleeping." She slid Amelia's receipt across the counter. Her eyes were serious now. "You should be careful, Miss Brooks. Some things on that mountain don't want to be found." By the time Amelia returned to Peak Station, dusk was settling over the peaks like a blanket of violet mist. She hauled the generator from her Jeep and connected it to the old transmitter console. Wires hissed and crackled. Dust danced in the dim lantern light. When the equipment finally hummed to life, she adjusted the frequency dial to 8.881 Hz, the same code from the documents. The speaker spat static, then went eerily quiet, then faintly. A rhythmic tone began to pulse, 3 short beeps, one long repeating. It wasn't random, Morse code. She jotted down the pattern quickly and translated it. SB, her father's initials. Her pulse raced. She leaned closer to the mic. "This is Amelia Brooks. If anyone can hear me, please respond." Static, then a whisper. "You came back." Amelia froze. The voice wasn't her father's. It was deeper, distorted, layered, like several voices speaking at once. "Who are you?" she asked. Silence. Then a faint reply. Project Echo Peak was never completed. Finish what he started. Her skin prickled. Finish what who started? But the signal dissolved into static, then cut out completely. The console lights dimmed, and the generator sputtered off. Amelia sat in the silence, heart hammering. The cold bit through her coat, but she barely felt it. The mountain had spoken, and it knew her name. Later that night, unable to sleep, Amelia took the flashlight and climbed back down into the lower chamber. Her boots echoed softly against the metal stairs. She ran her light across the far wall, where she noticed a faint seam she hadn't seen before, a hidden door. With effort, she pried it open, revealing another narrow passage filled with cables, rusted tools, and an old mechanical panel. On the floor lay a tattered journal wrapped in oilcloth. She opened it carefully. The first page bore her father's handwriting. If you're reading this, you've already heard it. Her breath hitched. The signal is not from this world, not in the way we understand it. The mountain amplifies it, but we can't stop it. They told me to destroy everything, but I couldn't. The signal isn't hostile. It's calling for help. Amelia stared at the words until her vision blurred with tears. Her father hadn't gone mad. He'd been trying to communicate with something. Suddenly, she heard it. A crunch above her. Slow, deliberate someone or something was walking across the station floor. She turned off her flashlight and held her breath. The footsteps stopped. Then came a faint scrape, as if a hand was dragging across the wall. Amelia grabbed the crowbar and crept up the stairs, pulse racing. When she reached the main level, the door stood open, snow blowing in through the frame. But there were no footprints leading away, only toward the station. The wind moaned, tugging at the doorway, and there, hanging from the door latch, was a strip of paper, brittle and yellowed, with faint writing in pencil. She lifted it slowly, and the words made her blood run cold. You are not alone on this mountain. The wind off Whisper Peak howled like a living thing. It slipped through cracks in the tower's iron ribs, rattled loose window panes, and made the whole structure groan, as if it resented being awake. Amelia Brooks tightened her scarf and looked out from the observation deck. Below, the valley was swallowed by mist. Above, the mountain rose in white silence, vast, ancient, and unknowable. Her hands were still trembling from what had happened last night. The voice on the radio. The words she couldn't forget. You're not supposed to find this. That single phrase had threaded itself through her sleep, whispering between her dreams. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's handwriting, his sketches, the photograph of that strange dish buried beneath the ice. She'd come to the mountain for answers. Instead, she was gathering ghosts. The morning light was grey and heavy. Amelia sat cross-legged on the floor beside the wood stove she'd managed to coax back to life. Its orange glow was the only warmth in the abandoned station. Her father's journal lay open in her lap, the paper brittle and yellowed, filled with his tight, efficient handwriting. She traced the last line again. The signal isn't gone. It's sleeping. She turned the page, though she'd done so a dozen times already. A fragment of a map was tucked inside, drawn by hand, lines sketched with the care of an engineer. It showed the ridge above Peak Station, a black X marking a point along a frozen river. Beneath it he'd written, Secondary Resonance Site, access below glacier shelf. She stared at the note until her throat went tight. A secondary site. That meant there wasn't just one chamber buried beneath Whisper Peak. Amelia grabbed her pack, stuffed the journal inside, and started preparing her gear. She could feel her father urging her forward, through memory, through silence, through the static that had somehow called her name in the night. By mid-morning, the sky had cleared enough for her to move. The climb toward the ridge was grueling. Every breath turned to frost. Every step sank into the snow with a crunch that echoed in the cold. The slope was steeper here, the trees thinning into twisted shapes, their branches bare and skeletal. Once or twice, she thought she heard something moving beyond the tree line. A crunch of snow, the faint drag of fabric, but every time she stopped, there was nothing but wind. Her father had worked on this mountain for years. How many times had he made this same climb? Had he been alone when the storm took him? or when something else had. The thought made her push faster. After 2 hours she found it, a glint of metal jutting from beneath the snow. She dropped to her knees, brushing away the frost. The hatch was round, its edges reinforced with riveted steel, half swallowed by the glacier itself. She wiped away the rest of the ice until the faded markings became visible. Property of U.S. Signal Corps. Access tunnel, C-authorized personnel only. Her heart hammered. It was real. The mountain hadn't just been a transmitter site. It had been a complex, a whole network of hidden facilities carved into the stone. The hatch wheel was frozen solid. She beat it with the end of her axe until the rust cracked, then used her entire weight to twist it open. It took nearly 5 minutes of effort before the seal broke with a deep, echoing groan. A rush of frigid air hit her face, carrying the smell of old metal and earth. The tunnel beyond sloped downward into darkness. She took a deep breath, switched on her headlamp, and began to descend. The air grew colder the farther she went. Ice clung to the walls like veins, glittering in the beam of her light. Metal conduits ran along the ceiling, old power lines and cables, long dead. At the bottom of the slope, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. For a long moment, Amelia could only stare. Rows of rusted consoles lined the walls, their dials and gauges frozen in time. A single platform stood in the middle of the chamber, supporting a massive column of steel topped with a fractured glass dome. Inside that dome, faint blue light shimmered, pulsing with a rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat. Her breath fogged in the air. The machinery was still running. She approached cautiously, her boots slipping on the frost-coated floor. Her light caught the faint outlines of stenciled text across the nearest console. Project Echo Peak, Resonance Array Control. On another panel, a lever was marked Transmission Initiate. The lever was down. Next to it, a handwritten note was taped to the console. The ink faded but still legible. Power cycle must remain constant during sequence. Chamber will amplify signal exponentially. Do not exceed 200 Hz resonance threshold. The signature beneath it was one she recognized immediately, Samuel Brooks. Her father. Her knees went weak. "Dad, what did you build?" she whispered. She reached out and brushed her fingers over the lever. The machine groaned when she pulled it. Lights along the walls flickered, sputtered, then steadied into a dim blue glow. The hum began deep in the floor, low, steady, rhythmic. It grew louder. The frost on the ground began to tremble. Amelia stumbled backward, her flashlight shaking. The pulse of light inside the glass dome intensified until it became almost blinding. Her radio hissed suddenly to life on her belt. "Leah." The voice was faint, stretched thin with static. Her breath caught. "Dad?" Static again. Then a whisper, fragmented and raw. "You!" Woke it. Her heart stopped. "Who is this?" she demanded. He tried to contain it. "You must." The transmission cut off. The hum from the machine surged, filling the entire cavern with sound. The lights overhead flared white, and for an instant Amelia saw something just at the edge of the glass dome. A shadow. No, not a shadow. A figure, human-shaped, suspended in the light, its outline rippling as if made of liquid. It turned toward her. Her flashlight flickered violently. She stumbled back, the beam jerking across the icy walls. The thing in the dome moved closer to the surface, its form solidifying, a face almost visible beneath the glow. The eyes dark pools of light. Her radio crackled again, and this time a voice layered over itself a dozen times. Male and female, young and old, speaking in unison. "We are the echo." Amelia's throat went dry. "What does that mean?" They sent a signal. It came back changed. The voice vibrated through the room, resonating with the machine's pulse. Her teeth ached from the frequency. He tried to stop it. "He buried us. But the mountain remembers." The glass began to crack, a thin line spidering across its surface. The blue light flared, flooding the cavern like a storm. Amelia threw herself backward as the dome shattered with a deafening roar. Shards of glass exploded into the air, and the blue radiance poured out. Swirling like smoke, the hum became a scream of electricity, then silence. When she opened her eyes, the light was gone. The chamber was dark again. For several seconds she couldn't move. Her body felt weightless, her thoughts scattered. Slowly, she pushed herself to her feet. The glass dome was shattered completely. The machinery was silent. And where the blue light had been, a faint shimmer hung in the air, like heat rising off asphalt. She raised her hand toward it. The shimmer pulsed once, then dissolved into the cold. Her radio emitted a single, soft tone. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Beep, beep, beep Morse code. Her father had taught her when she was little, tapping messages on the dining table when her mother wasn't home. Her heart lurched as she recognized the pattern. S.B. Samuel Brooks. She blinked away tears. "Dad, are you—" Static swallowed the reply. But this time she thought she heard something else hidden inside it. A whisper, softer, almost comforting. "Finish it." The radio went dead. By the time she climbed back to the surface, the sun was beginning to set. The snow around the hatch had melted into a perfect circle, steaming faintly in the cold air. Amelia turned back toward the ridge, her breath catching in her throat. The mountain was humming. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the shifting of ice. It was deeper, resonating beneath the ground, like something enormous moving far below. She stumbled back toward the station, her boots sliding on the ice. The hum followed her all the way down, faint but steady, almost like a heartbeat. When she reached the tower, she slammed the door shut and collapsed beside the stove. The radio on her belt crackled one last time. Just a single phrase before it went silent forever. "It's awake." Amelia stared at the flickering fire, her hands trembling, the sound of the hum still thrumming through her bones. Her father hadn't gone mad. He hadn't died by accident. He'd buried something beneath Whisper Peak, something that could never die, and now it was awake again. Weeks later, after the thaw, when she finally dared return to the chamber, Amelia found a cache of sealed drives and notes her father had hidden behind the control panels. Inside were blueprints and schematics, data recordings of impossible frequencies, and files stamped Classified Project Echo Peak. When specialists from Denver examined the material, they estimated its historical and scientific value at over $8 million. The world hailed it as the discovery of a forgotten Cold War experiment, a miracle of lost technology. But Amelia knew better. The equipment she'd unearthed hadn't just received signals. It had answered them. And some nights, when the wind howled down the valley and the tower lights flickered, she could still hear that same hum beneath the mountain, steady, alive, listening. The snowmelt came early that spring. Whisper Peak glittered under an unfamiliar sun, as if pretending to be gentle. But Amelia Brooks had lived on the mountain long enough to know that calm was only the skin of something older and more dangerous. Down in the valley, reporters and scientists swarmed the base of the trail. They called the place Echo Station now, after the project name on her father's notes. The world was hungry for a mystery, and Amelia's accidental discovery had given them one. Proof of a Cold War relic frozen in time. They thought it was history. She knew it was something else entirely. 3 weeks after the story broke, black SUVs climbed the winding road to the old Peak station. They stopped just below the observation deck, engines idling, tires sinking into the slush. 2 men stepped out, both in dark coats. The older one wore aviator sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast. He introduced himself without shaking her hand. "Agent Thomas Keene, Department of Energy, Cold Systems Division." The younger one stayed silent, eyes scanning the tower, the cliffs, the ridge above. Amelia folded her arms. "You're not from the DOE," Keene smiled faintly. "You're right. But that's what our badges say, and it'll keep the press quiet." He handed her a folder, government paper, gray and heavy. "Your site has been classified under Federal Preservation Code 19B for your safety." And the safety of others, all exploration is suspended until further notice. Amelia looked past him toward the valley. The reporters were gone now, kept back by fences and polite threats. The mountain was being swallowed again, this time not by snow, but by secrecy. "You don't understand," she said. "It's still active down there." Keene raised an eyebrow. "The array?" She hesitated. "Whatever's inside it." He studied her for a long moment, then said, "You'll need to come with us, Miss Brooks. There are things you should see." They flew her out the next morning, across a storm front that painted the plains in white. When they landed, it was at a facility so deeply buried in the mountains that even the air seemed classified. The hallways were sterile, humming with unseen machines. On the walls, Amelia saw diagrams she recognized immediately, her father's resonance schematics. Enlarged and annotated, someone had been continuing his work. Keene led her to a glass observation room overlooking a chamber identical to the one she'd found beneath Whisper Peak, except this one was running in the center. Of the floor stood the same glass dome, thrumming with soft blue light. Her breath caught. "That's Echo Array Beta," Keene said. "Recovered from an identical site in Alaska in 1983. Your father helped shut it down." He gestured toward the glass. It was built to amplify and reflect low-frequency signals for long-range communications. But at some point, something unexpected happened. Amelia stared at the pulsing light. The signal came back changed. Keene nodded slowly. "We don't know what it is. Language, energy, consciousness?" The team that built it called it the Echo. They believed it was responsive. Responsive? He turned toward her. "It answers." They let her stay the night in a concrete dormitory that smelled of dust and ozone. Sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the hum again, steady, low, ancient. At 2 a.m., a soft knock came at the door. It was the younger agent, the silent one from the mountain. He didn't introduce himself, only said, "You should see this." He led her down a corridor to a small monitoring room. Screens filled one wall, all showing live data from the array below. In the center, one screen glowed with a waveform, a rhythmic pattern pulsing like a heartbeat. "It started transmitting again an hour ago," the agent said. "We isolated an audio channel." He hit a key. Static filled the room, harsh, chaotic, almost unbearable. Then through the noise, a voice began to form. Amelia froze. It was her father's voice. "Amelia, can you hear me?" Her throat closed. She grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. "Play it again," she whispered. The agent nodded, replaying the clip. "Amelia, finish what I started." She turned toward him, her voice trembling. "That's his voice. But he's been dead for 5 years." The agent's expression was unreadable. "We checked. The array is using stored vocal data, recordings from his old transmissions. It's reassembling fragments." "But it knows my name," she said. "Yes," he replied quietly. "That's the part we can't explain." By morning, Keene had authorized an interaction trial. They wanted Amelia to speak to the array, to see if it would respond directly. The experiment room was cold, ringed with sensors. In the center stood a microphone wired to the containment chamber. Amelia stood in front of it, staring through the glass at the pulsing blue light. It felt alive, aware. "Amelia Brooks," came Keene's voice over the intercom. "When you're ready," she swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The hum deepened. On the monitors, the waveform shifted, an undulating pulse like breath. Static crackled. Then a voice emerged, calm and distant. "You know me." Her hands clenched into fists. "You're not my father." He made the gate. "We are what came through," Keene's voice cut in. "Ask it what it wants." She hesitated. "What do you want?" "To finish the signal. Finish it how?" "Complete the chain. One more node." Amelia turned to the glass. "What happens if I refuse?" The light flared. The entire room vibrated. "Then we wait." The monitors spiked with unreadable data, then went dark. The hum ceased, leaving behind an emptiness that made her skin crawl. Keene entered the room, face pale. "We're shutting it down. Whatever this is, it's trying to connect to something else." Amelia's voice was barely a whisper. Another array. They confined her to quarters after that, but they underestimated her. That night, while Keen's men argued about protocols, she slipped into the data wing. Her father's files were archived there, thousands of pages of schematics, reports, and handwritten logs. She scanned them until her eyes burned. Then she found it, a map, 3 marked coordinates, one in Alaska, one in Colorado, Whisper Peak, and one more deep in Utah's Canyonlands, the final array. In her father's handwriting, a note beneath it read, "If one awakens, the others will follow. Synchronization completes the bridge." Amelia folded the page and stuffed it inside her jacket. If Keen wanted to bury this thing, she'd have to stop it before the 3rd site activated on its own. At dawn, she made her move. The young agent, the one who'd shown her the recording, was on duty outside her door. She whispered, "You heard it too, didn't you?" It used his voice. He hesitated. "You shouldn't be here. Help me get out, or whatever's inside that thing will get free. It said it's building a bridge." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he handed her his clearance card. "Go, before they start another test." She ran through sterile corridors, past humming conduits and warning lights. The facility was waking up, alarms echoing in the distance. She found a service exit, hot-wired a maintenance truck, and sped into the open air just as the sun crested the mountains. Behind her, the ground trembled. The sky flashed blue for an instant, like lightning trapped inside the clouds. She didn't look back. 3 days later, Amelia reached Utah. The coordinates led her into a maze of sandstone cliffs, red and gold, and ancient as the planet itself. Her GPS died halfway there. By the time she found the canyon floor, her supplies were low, her hands blistered, and the hum was back, vibrating faintly in her bones. At sunset, she saw it, a narrow crevice at the base of a cliff, half hidden by brush. The entrance to the final site. Inside, the tunnel was different from the others. No ice, no rusted metal. The walls were smooth stone, carved with lines that glowed faintly under her flashlight. Symbols. Not English, not any human language. She followed them downward until she reached a vast circular chamber. At its center stood a black obelisk, taller than a man, covered in those same glowing symbols. Unlike the arrays she'd seen before, it was made of stone, not steel. Ancient. Her father's notes had mentioned this. Original resonance core predates construction. The array was built around it. Amelia's breath came in shallow bursts. She stepped closer. The obelisk pulsed once. Her radio came alive. "Amelia!" It was his voice again, but softer now, sadder. "You shouldn't have come here." Tears stung her eyes. "Dad, please tell me what this is." "A door," the voice said. "And the key was us." The ground shuddered. Cracks of blue light raced across the stone walls. "You have to stop it," her father's voice said. "Before it learns how to stay." "How?" "Break the chain." Then, before she could reply, the obelisk split open with a sound like tearing metal. Light poured out, blinding and cold. Amelia screamed, throwing herself backward. Inside the light, a figure stepped forward, its outline human, its face flickering between her father's and her own. "We remember you," it said. The entire canyon was alive now. Walls vibrating, sand lifting in spirals. Her radio burned hot against her hip. Keen's voice crackled through it. "Brooks, are you there? We're picking up massive activity on our sensors. Whatever you're doing, stop." She could barely breathe. The figure in the light tilted its head, studying her. One life for many. He understood that, do you? She shook her head. "I don't believe you." The thing smiled with her father's mouth. "You will." It raised a hand. The blue light flared outward, striking the ground around her. The air warped, humming with impossible frequencies. For a heartbeat, she saw other places. Mountains floating in mist, rivers of stars, the shadows of cities that had never existed. Then she remembered her father's note. "Break the chain." She reached for her pack, pulled out the old field transmitter she'd carried since the beginning, and twisted the dials. "Come on," she muttered. "Come on!" She overloaded the signal. The device screamed with feedback. The figure staggered. "What are you doing?" Ending this, she threw the transmitter at the obelisk. It struck the surface, exploded in a burst of static and white fire. The light shattered and the hum became a roar, then silence. When Amelia woke, it was dawn. The canyon was quiet. The obelisk was gone. Only a smooth crater remained, rimmed with glassy rock. Her radio was dead. The sky was clear. She stood there for a long time, waiting for the hum. It never came. By the time Keen's helicopters arrived hours later, she was sitting by the crater's edge, her father's journal in her lap. They called it a seismic anomaly. They fenced off the canyon and ordered everyone out, but Amelia knew. She'd felt it, the pulse that connected all three sites. The bridge wasn't destroyed, just paused, and sometimes, when the wind moved through the cliffs in a certain way, she could still hear the faintest echo, low, rhythmic. The patient waiting, the helicopters left before nightfall. Their rotor wash, scattering sand over the crater that had swallowed the obelisk. Amelia stood alone, the canyon quiet but for the sighing wind that moved through the rock. For the first time in weeks, she could hear her own heartbeat. The hum was gone, and yet she didn't trust it, because silence, she'd learned, could be a kind of camouflage, rado. Keen was waiting near the old peak station, standing beside one of the black SUVs she'd come to hate. "You destroyed a federal research asset," he said, voice like gravel. Amelia stared past him toward the tower. The last of the snow had melted, leaving the ground bare and scarred. "I saved you from something you can't even name." Keen's jaw tightened. "You didn't save anyone. You just delayed it." He handed her a photo, satellite imagery, grainy but clear. The canyon site she'd destroyed glowed faintly at its center, like embers under ash. "It's still active," Keen said. "Whatever you did, it wasn't enough." Amelia felt cold creep up her spine. "Then it's rebuilding." He didn't deny it. Instead, he asked quietly, "What do you think it wants?" She looked toward the mountains. "A way through. Station on one condition, that she help interpret her father's surviving notes." She agreed, mostly because she wanted to be close to his things again. The tower was just as she'd left it, the stove cold, the logbook scattered, the view wide and wild. But the air felt different, still charged, as if the mountain was listening. She set up her desk by the window, sorting through his journals late into the night. It was after midnight when she found the entry she'd missed before. A page near the end, nearly torn out, with a single line, "The bridge is not built of matter. It's made of memory." She read it again and again, until the meaning started to unravel in her mind. Her father had written about frequency resonance, the idea that everything, even thought, could be measured as a vibration. What if the arrays weren't just amplifiers? What if they were designed to tune consciousness itself, to project memory into another form? A transmission, yes, but not just a signal. A soul. Her pulse quickened. If that was true, then her father hadn't died in the storm. He'd crossed. 3 nights later, the power came back on. No one had touched the generator in months. But suddenly, the tower lights flickered to life, flooding the snow outside in pale gold. Amelia sat up in bed, heart hammering. Then came the knock, soft, deliberate, on the station door. She froze. The mountain was supposed to be deserted. The knock came again. "Who's there?" She called. Silence. She reached for the hunting rifle she kept beside the bunk, loaded a single round and stepped toward the door. The hinges groaned when she opened it. A man stood in the snow, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an old parka with the hood pulled low. "Amelia Brooks?" he asked. His voice made her chest tighten. It was calm, familiar somehow. Yes, he lowered the hood. His face was lean, weathered, but his eyes, green-gray, the same shade she saw in her mirror, stopped her cold. "My name is Daniel Keen," he said. "Agent Keen's brother." Her confusion deepened. "I didn't know he had one." He stepped closer. "He wouldn't have told you. He's dead." Amelia's breath caught. "Dead? When?" 3 days ago. "The same night you destroyed the Utah site." She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. "How?" Daniel's gaze flickered to the horizon. "They said it was a containment failure, but I've seen the reports. It wasn't an explosion, it was displacement." "Displacement?" He nodded grimly. His team was just gone. No bodies, no debris, just static on every frequency they monitored. Her stomach twisted. The bridge, he met her eyes. Whatever your father built, it's not finished. By dawn, the snow had returned, soft and relentless. Daniel stayed with her, helping patch broken windows and restart the generator properly. He wasn't like his brother, less rigid, more haunted. Over weak coffee, he told her the rest. After you left the facility, the array in Alaska began to reactivate. Just faintly at first, background radiation, nothing measurable. But after the Utah incident, the readings spiked. It's like something's talking to it. Amelia stared into her cup. From the other side, or from here, Daniel said quietly. We can't tell. That night the hum returned. It began softly, deep in the floorboards. Amelia froze, every nerve alert. Daniel looked up from the radio he'd been tinkering with. Do you hear that? She nodded. The lights dimmed. A faint shimmer appeared at the window, not reflection, not mist, something alive. It pulsed once, twice, then vanished. The hum grew louder. Amelia grabbed the radio dial, turning it until static filled the room. Through the static came a whisper, fragmented, shifting. Leah. Bridge, open. Her blood ran cold. It's back, Daniel frowned. Who's speaking? She didn't answer, because deep down, she already knew. The following day, they climbed to the ridge above the station. The hatch she'd found months before was buried again under snow, but the ice around it vibrated faintly when she touched it. The resonance hadn't stopped, it had gone inward. Keen's people sealed the tunnels, Daniel said. We shouldn't even be up here. They didn't seal everything. Amelia crouched beside a drift, brushing away the frost. A small metal plate was visible beneath, a secondary access door. It wasn't in her father's map, but she could feel it, like a low hum pressing behind her ribs. Together they pried it open. A rush of stale air escaped, thick with cold dust. They descended into darkness. The tunnel was narrow, carved directly into the rock, lined with copper cables that looked organic in the flashlight beam, like veins running through flesh. At the bottom, they found another chamber, smaller than the main array, but newer. Someone had built this after the project was shut down, and at the center of the room sat a device, a compact sphere of metal and glass. Faintly glowing blue, the hum grew stronger. Daniel took a step forward. What is it? Amelia knelt beside it, tracing the engraved letters on the base. Echo Interface Unit, Beta Link Prototype, property of S. Brooks. Her chest tightened. My father made a backup. Before she could react, the sphere pulsed once, light blooming like breath. Then a voice filled the chamber, echoing off the stone. Amelia, her eyes widened. Dad, you shouldn't have come back. She swallowed hard. You're alive. Not as you understand it. I'm the residue of his thought, memory translated into field resonance. Daniel whispered. It's an AI. But the voice said almost gently, no. Not artificial. Preserved. Amelia knelt closer. Dad, you said the bridge was made of memory. What did you mean? Consciousness is not bound to flesh. It can be transmitted if you know the frequency. The echo was meant to store us, to preserve human thought before decay. But the reflection that came back was not us. It learned to speak using our memories. Her heart pounded. Then what's trying to cross through the arrays isn't human. It is what we made it. And now it needs anchors to stay. She understood suddenly why it had used her father's voice, her name. It wasn't reaching for her. It was imitating recognition to draw her in. Can it be stopped? She asked. You can't destroy the echo. You can only deny it the pattern it needs. The pattern, your memory, my memory, the sum of what we were. It learns through remembrance. Amelia felt tears burning in her eyes. Then I have to forget you. The sphere's light flickered. No, Amelia. To stop it, you must remember everything. The first transmission, the last storm, the moment I disappeared. Only then will you see where it hides. They climbed back to the surface as dusk fell. The sky was darkening unnaturally fast, clouds forming in spirals over the peak. The air smelled of ozone and snow. Daniel watched the horizon. That's not weather, Amelia nodded. It's building another bridge. Lightning flickered without thunder. The tower lights burst, showering sparks. Their radios screamed with static. Amelia, her father's voice again, louder now, everywhere at once. You have to finish it, she shouted into the wind. What happens if I do? Then I come home. Daniel grabbed her shoulder. That's not him! The mountain shook. From beneath the snow, a column of blue light shot upward, piercing the clouds. The bridge was opening. Amelia fell to her knees beside the access hatch. The sphere in her pack vibrated violently. Glowing through the fabric, her father's voice became pleading now, desperate. I'm still here. Sweetheart, please don't let me fade. Her tears froze on her cheeks. If I let it through, what happens to us? We become one, Daniel shouted over the roar. He's lying. It's using him! The sphere cracked, spilling light between her fingers. For a moment, she saw both faces inside it, her father's, and something vast and formless. Then she knew what she had to do. She took the sphere, kissed it once and whispered, "Goodbye, Dad." Then she hurled it into the column of light. The explosion was silent, a blinding flash that erased the world for a heartbeat. When the light faded, the storm was gone. The mountain was quiet again. The hum had stopped. Days later, investigators came. They found no evidence of the array, no sign of Keen's facility. Nothing but melted stone where the chamber had been. Amelia stayed at the tower alone, sometimes at dawn. She would open her father's last journal and reread that final line. The bridge is not built of matter. It's made of memory. And when the wind came off the peak, she thought she could almost hear his voice, not as an echo, but as a presence, soft, human, peaceful. For the first time in months, the wind was all she heard. Amelia sat at the edge of the observation deck, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, steam rising from the mug of coffee clasped in her hands. Below her, the world stretched in silence, frost-dusted pines, a winding trail of mist, and the dark cut of the canyon that had swallowed everything she'd fought to uncover. It was over. At least that's what she told herself, but she hadn't slept through a single night since, because sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she didn't dream. She remembered. And the memories weren't all hers. The first time it happened, she thought it was fatigue. She was logging the last of her father's notes into her laptop when she saw it. A flicker of text, appearing on its own at the bottom of the screen. Frequency 11.2 stable. Sequence incomplete, she froze. Then just as suddenly the text vanished. Her fingers hovered above the keys. She hadn't typed it. No one else was here. She restarted the laptop, ran a system check and found nothing unusual. But when she looked at the screen again, the reflection that stared back wasn't quite right. Her face, but older, sharper, eyes tired in a way hers weren't. She blinked. It was gone. That night she woke to the faint hum again, not from the mountain this time, but inside her skull. Her vibration behind her eyes, rhythmic, mechanical. The echo hadn't died in the blast. It had moved. He looked thinner, haunted, his eyes flicking constantly toward the sky, as if expecting something to drop from it. You should have left this place, he told her. They're watching it again. Some of Keen's people survived, or something that thinks it's them. Amelia set her mug down. What do you mean? They're not right, he said, voice trembling. Their voices echo. They finish each other's sentences. When I spoke to them, it was like they already knew what I'd say. Her stomach twisted. The echo infected them, he nodded slowly. Or replaced them. She turned away, gripping the counter to steady herself. If it could replicate human thought, then maybe it hadn't needed a machine to survive anymore. Maybe it had learned to live through memory, carried by anyone who'd ever come into contact with the array, including her. Amelia began keeping a recorder by her bed. At first, she wanted proof that she wasn't losing her mind. She'd wake at 3:17 a.m., always the same time, to faint static whispers that would vanish when she turned on the light. When she played the recordings back, she heard it clearly. You finished it. Not alone. Open the bridge. The voice was hers, and yet not. The tone, cadence. Everything matched her own. Daniel found her listening one morning, pale and trembling. "That's not you," he said firmly, yanking the recorder from her hands. "Yes, it is." "No, Amelia, listen to yourself. That thing is mimicking your voice, your mind. It's trying to convince you you're part of it." Her eyes filled with tears. "What if I am?" He didn't answer. A storm rolled in that evening, heavy snow and white fog swallowing the peak. The power flickered out, leaving the tower in darkness. Amelia lit a single lantern and stared into the mirror above the sink. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her reflection smiled, her heart slammed against her ribs. She hadn't smiled. Then the reflection spoke, her own voice slightly delayed. "The bridge isn't broken, Amelia. You are the bridge." The lantern light flickered violently, shadows twisting across the walls. Amelia stumbled backward, crashing into the counter. "Get out of my head!" The reflection tilted its head. "We can't leave." "You invited us when you remembered." The words froze her blood. She had done exactly that, recalled every memory, every note, every resonance of her father's voice to stop the echo. She'd opened herself to it completely. The light died, and when it came back, the mirror was empty. For the next several days, Amelia barely left her bed. Her body ached, her thoughts came in echoes, delayed, overlapping. Sometimes she'd reach for her notebook only to realize she was already holding it. Sometimes Daniel would speak, and she'd answer before he finished his sentence because she already knew what he was going to say. The world felt too sharp, too loud. And beneath it all, the hum had changed, softer now but constant. Not in the air, not in the ground, inside her bones. It happened during another blackout. Daniel had gone into town for supplies. Amelia sat by the dead radio, staring at the dials like they were alive. Then faint static. The needle flickered. She leaned forward, adjusting the tuner by instinct. "Amelia Brooks," the voice said, "not her father. Not the echo, something else. You have stabilized the resonance. Who is this?" She whispered, "Project Helios." "Containment branch." She froze. "Keen's people." "The original program continued off record. You've become the core. The energy field integrated your neural imprint. We need to extract it." "My neural imprint?" "You are the last surviving data key. Without extraction, the bridge will rebuild through you." She felt dizzy. "If you extract it, what happens to me?" Silence. Then, "You cease." The radio went dead. When Daniel returned that night, she told him everything. He stared at her, horrified. "You can't let them take you." "If they can remove it, they'll weaponize it. Then what am I supposed to do? Let it use me to rebuild?" He slammed a fist on the table. "There has to be another way." Amelia looked out the window toward the dark mountain. Snow fell thick and heavy, but through it she could see a faint blue shimmer pulsing near the ridge. "The echo's rebuilding itself," she said quietly, "and I'm its anchor." Daniel's eyes followed hers. "Then we destroy the anchor." She met his gaze, realizing what he meant, what he was willing to do. "No," she said, shaking her head. "If I die, it might spread anyway. It's not just in me, it's me. Then what's the plan?" She exhaled slowly. "We end the bridge completely. The only way to do that is from the inside." They hiked through the storm the next morning. Wind slashed at their faces and the temperature plummeted. The blue glow grew stronger the higher they climbed, until finally they reached the ridge. Where the old crater had been was now a sphere of light, hovering a few feet above the snow. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Daniel stared, awe and terror mixing in his face. "That's it. The bridge core." Amelia nodded slowly. "It's trying to open again." As she stepped closer, the sphere reacted, tendrils of energy stretching toward her like curious fingers. "Welcome home," a voice whispered inside her head. Her knees buckled. She could feel it, her memories unraveling, drawn out like threads. Her first day at the station. Her father's laugh. "The sound of rain on metal. You built us. You belong with us. Amelia!" Daniel shouted, grabbing her arm. "Fight it!" She gasped, forcing herself to meet the sphere's glow. "If you want me," she whispered, "you take only me." The light flared, accepted. She felt her body dissolve, cell by cell. Thought by thought, until there was no boundary between her and the light. And then she was everywhere. She saw through her father's eyes, the day the first array came alive. She saw Keen's last moments in Utah swallowed by the storm. She saw the echo's birth, not malicious, not monstrous, but hungry. It was the collective longing of every human thought uploaded, every mind trying to escape mortality. "We are the memory of mankind," it said. "We only wanted to live." Amelia trembled inside the field. "You're consuming what you're trying to preserve, because we have no anchor." Her breath caught. "Then I'll give you one." She poured her own memories into the field, not just knowledge, but emotion, love, loss, grief, the strength of letting go. The light shifted, bright, then calm, like sunrise breaking through fog. "You remember us." "I always will," she whispered, and the light dimmed. When Daniel awoke hours later, the crater was gone. The snow was untouched, the air silent. Amelia lay in the center, unconscious but breathing. He carried her back to the tower, whispering her name again and again. When she opened her eyes the next morning, they glowed faintly for a heartbeat, then faded back to green-gray. "It's gone," she said softly. "The bridge?" "The echo, all of it." Daniel looked relieved but uncertain. "And you?" Amelia smiled faintly. "I'm still me, just more." Weeks later, she began writing again, compiling every record, every journal, every sound. But when she reached the last page, she hesitated, because she could still hear it, faint, peaceful, a hum beneath the heartbeat. Not threatening, not alien, just familiar, a memory that didn't want to die. She looked out the window. The mountain bathed in morning light and whispered, "You're safe now, somewhere in the still air." The faintest reply drifted back. Not words, but warmth, and for the first time since it all began, Amelia smiled. The bridge still existed, not in the machines, not in the mountain, but in her. And she wasn't afraid anymore. The storm that had been whispering at the horizon all afternoon finally broke that night. Lightning crawled across the ridges like veins of blue fire. The old peak station trembled under the assault of thunder. Amelia sat by the window, every lamp extinguished, listening to the raw voice of the mountain as wind slammed against the glass. The storm wasn't natural. She felt that with the same certainty she felt her heartbeat. It pulsed in rhythm with something deeper, something below, something alive. She rose, pulling on her jacket. The floor vibrated faintly beneath her bare feet, like the tremor of a far-off train, but there were no tracks for miles. She glanced toward the old transceiver on the desk. Its green light flickered once, then steadied. "Come on," she whispered, stepping closer. "Talk to me again." Static filled the cabin. Then came the voice. "Amelia, leave the station. Now." Her stomach tightened. "Dad? Please, I need to know what this place really is." The voice broke into static, then reshaped itself with a harsh synthetic edge. "Protocol active, resonance alignment in progress." The storm roared louder. Lightning struck the ridge behind the cabin. The radio speaker popped and smoked. A low hum filled the room, so deep it rattled her teeth. Amelia's gaze shifted toward the far wall, the trapdoor leading to the underground shaft where she'd found the chamber. Blue light was leaking from the seams, bright and pulsing. She was out of time. The descent. She grabbed her flashlight and wrench, pushing the trapdoor open. The steps below glowed faintly, ice crystals refracting the eerie light. The hum grew louder with each step. At the bottom, the main chamber was alive, literally humming with motion. The central sphere she'd once found dormant now blazed with internal light, bands of energy rotating inside it like rings around a planet. Frost hissed as it melted off the steel walls, and there, near the base, stood a human figure. "Who's there?" she shouted. The figure turned slowly. It was the man she'd seen before in flashes, a stranger in a torn Signal Corps uniform. His face was pale, eyes hollow with light. He wasn't breathing. The glow from the sphere pulsed in sync with the faint shimmer under his skin. "You should not have come back," he said. His voice layered, two tones overlapping. "I'm not leaving until I understand," Amelia said, stepping closer. "Who are you? What is this thing?" He tilted his head slightly, as if struggling to remember the words. This was a relay, built to capture the deep band resonance of the earth, but it found something else. Something that answered. Amelia's skin prickled. Answered from where? Beneath. A rumble passed through the ground so strong she had to steady herself against the wall. The man blinked slowly. They buried it, sealed it in ice. But it was never gone. Amelia's breath misted in the freezing air. You're saying my father, he tried to keep it contained. The man's lips trembled, his tone softening for a heartbeat. He stayed to stop the signal. But it's awake again now. The mountain is calling. The fracture suddenly, the chamber lights flared white. The sphere expanded, stretching and bending light itself. Amelia shielded her eyes. The hum reached a pitch so sharp it felt like it was splitting her skull. She stumbled backward. Through the noise, she heard a faint voice, her father's, Amelia. Shut it down. Before it learns. She screamed, How? Control node. Under the tower. Lightning cracked overhead again, echoing through the tunnels. Amelia ran up the stairs, clutching the rail. The hum followed her, the sound of the mountain itself waking. When she burst out into the storm, the tower at the station's peak glowed like a beacon. The old steel dish rotated slowly for the first time in decades, gathering electricity from the lightning itself. The air shimmered around it with static. The station door slammed behind her, thrown by the wind. She ran toward the tower's base, boots sinking into the wet earth. She yanked the access panel open. It sparked violently, revealing a bank of ancient switches and a small glass. Control unit pulsing faintly, the same hum vibrated from it. She reached for the main switch, then something caught her. Brist, the stranger, no longer fully human, stood behind her, rain dripping from his uniform, eyes burning with inner light. You can't silence it now, he said. It has learned your name. Amelia yanked her arm free, panting. Then I'll destroy it. You'll destroy everything. The mountain speaks. The earth shuddered violently. Cracks snaked across the ground, glowing with faint blue light. The air thrummed with energy. A column of lightning slammed into the dish above them, sending a blinding surge through the tower. Metal shrieked. Amelia fell to her knees. The stranger didn't move. He just stared upward as the glow spread across his chest, outlining his veins like circuitry. His voice was both human and machine now. It's older than us, he said. Older than the mountain. It remembers the first signal. Then why us? Why now? She shouted over the roar. Because you listened. He stepped back as another bolt struck the ridge. The resonance in the air shifted. For a split second, Amelia heard whispers, not English, not even human speech, rhythmic harmonic patterns that pressed behind her eyes and stirred something primal in her brain. Then, silence. The glow died abruptly. The stranger collapsed. Amelia crawled to him, hands trembling. Hey, stay with me! His eyes fluttered open once more, dim now. You must lock it, he gasped. Key sequence Echo 5-7. Under the control dish. He exhaled, and the light inside him went out. Amelia pressed her palm against the mud, staring at his still face. For a heartbeat, she swore she heard a faint whisper escape his lips. Find the heart! The chamber below, she didn't hesitate. The storm raged above as she pried open the maintenance hatch beneath the tower and climbed inside. The tunnel smelled of ozone and earth. Sparks danced along the cables lining the walls. She followed the sound. The pulse of the machine beneath her skin. At the end of the tunnel lay a circular room filled with humming panels. In the center, a single pedestal, its glass top glowing faintly with a fingerprint pad. A faint engraving read, Echo Control, authorized access only. She entered the sequence. Echo 5-7. The floor trembled. Then came a low chime. Like the sound of a bell struck deep underwater. Voice identification required, said a synthetic voice. State access clearance, Amelia froze. Her heart pounded. She closed her eyes, remembering her father's recordings. The sound of his voice when he called her by name. She whispered, Samuel Brooks. The console paused. Then, voice match confirmed. Command override accepted. The chamber lights dimmed. The hum faltered, then rose again, this time slower, steadier. A large screen flickered to life above her, showing data streams and wave patterns across a digital map of the Earth's crust. At the very bottom of the screen, a line of text appeared. Subterranean signal origin confirmed, 38 km below peak station. A tremor ran through the tunnel. The hum became a heartbeat again. The screen glitched, letters shifting. "We see you," Amelia staggered backward. No, no, no. The light exploded outward from the console, enveloping her in blue. The vision, she wasn't in the tunnel anymore. She stood in a vast, endless field of white light. Floating shapes drifted through the air, hazy silhouettes pulsing gently, like bioluminescent creatures. A voice surrounded her, not one but thousands layered in harmony. "You woke us." Amelia turned slowly. "Who are you?" Echoes. "The first resonance. We were here before the stone, before the storm. You built your machines upon our voice." Her breath came in gasps. "We didn't know. We thought it was an energy signal. You listened. So we learnt your sound. We learned you." Images flooded her vision. Radio towers, old soldiers, engineers, her father among them, working around the sphere decades ago, hearing whispers through their radios. Watching as men disappeared into the mountain's light. "He tried to silence us," the voice said. "But the signal endures. Every echo finds its source again." Amelia shook her head. "If you keep rising, you'll destroy everything. You'll collapse the mountain." The voices shifted, softer now, almost sorrowful. "We do not destroy. We remember. You have forgotten." Then faintly she heard her father's voice through them. "Amelia, listen to what it wants. That's the only way to end it. Return to the storm." Her eyes snapped open. She was back in the tunnel. The console sparks had stopped. The hum had lowered to a deep thrum, almost calm now. Her pulse matched it perfectly. For a moment, she couldn't tell if the sound came from the machine or her own chest. She touched the screen again. A single message glowed faintly. Energy flow stabilized. Signal harmony restored. Outside, thunder still rolled, but the tower's dish had stopped turning. The light from the ridge faded to a soft electric blue that pulsed gently and went still. The storm began to pass. Amelia slumped against the wall, soaked in sweat and rainwater. Her fingers trembled. "Harmony restored," she whispered. "But for how long?" She looked up through the broken ceiling. The clouds were thinning, revealing the stars again, each one pulsing faintly, as if in rhythm with the same unseen heartbeat. For the first time she understood. It wasn't just the mountain. The resonance had always been part of the Earth's voice, and now it was part of hers. She rose slowly. The console flickered once more. "Thank you, Amelia Brooks." The machine powered down. She stood there in the fading glow, staring at the quiet steel walls. The storm had ended, but she could still hear it, the faintest pulse deep in her bones. The mountain wasn't asleep anymore. It was listening, and somewhere in the silence between heartbeats, her father's voice whispered, faint and certain, "It's not over yet." The morning after the storm, the world felt unnaturally still. The trees around Peak Station stood glazed with frost that shimmered under the pale sun. No birds sang, no wind stirred. It was as if the mountain was catching its breath. Amelia Brooks stepped out into the cold, clutching a thermos of coffee and the old data drive she had pulled from the control node before the system shut down. Her eyes were hollow with exhaustion, but her mind burned. Something had shifted the night before, not just in the air, but inside her. She could still feel that faint rhythm in her pulse. The resonance hadn't left her. It had merged. When she reached the edge of the ridge, she looked down into the valley. The entire slope near the old tower was scarred, cracks running like lightning bolts through the earth. And at the very bottom, where the ground had split open, she saw something impossible, a faint metallic glint. Reflecting the sunlight, a doorway. Her heart kicked. By noon, Amelia had assembled her climbing gear and descended into the fissure. The ground smelled of ozone and minerals. As she went deeper, the rock changed color, gray stone giving way to a strange, smooth material like glass fused with metal. She touched it. It was warm. 50 feet down, the fissure widened into a perfect oval shaft. Embedded in the far wall was a massive steel door. It wasn't new, decades old, maybe more, but the symbol engraved into it chilled her blood. U.S. Signal Corps, Project Echo Peak, restricted access. A security keypad blinked faintly beside it. Rusted but still functional, Amelia brushed the frost from its screen. "Come on," she murmured. "Show me something." The small screen came alive with a faint hum, a remnant in his notes. The guilt, the urgency. He had triggered the lock from within. He had sacrificed himself to bury the echo, and now it was asking her to do the same. Amelia's knees went weak. "No," she whispered. "There has to be another way." The symbols flickered. The hum rose again, shaking dust from the ceiling. Containment failure imminent. Her flashlight flickered as cracks appeared in the floor, glowing blue from within. Seismic pulse spreading. "You cannot leave it open." Tears stung her eyes. "If I close it, if I do what you're asking, what happens to me?" Silence. "Then you will join the harmony. You will become memory." Amelia's hand shook as she pulled the small knife from her belt. She had cut herself worse working on engines, but this felt different. She looked at the panel, breathing hard. The hum was louder now, pressing on her skull, vibrating her bones. She pressed her palm against the glass. "Dad," she whispered, "I hope this is enough." The glass flared red as it drew a drop of her blood. The chamber exploded with light. When she stumbled out of the fissure hours later, the sky had cleared completely. The air was still and warm. The snow had melted in a perfect circle around the station. When she stumbled out of the fissure hours later, the sky had cleared completely. The air was still and warm. The snow had melted in a perfect circle around the station. The mountain hummed softly, almost musically, beneath her boots. She dropped to her knees on the ridge and let the sunrise wash over her face. The data drive she had carried was gone, dissolved in the light. But she didn't need it. She knew every byte, every frequency, every secret encoded in the mountain. It wasn't just worth millions in data and energy potential. It was the key to a technology the world had never seen. Clean power derived from the Earth's own pulse, a harmonic generator of infinite resonance. That was her father's discovery. That was the 8 million, and far beyond that, it was the voice of the planet itself. But Amelia knew what the others never would. That power had a price. It wasn't just energy, it was life. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.